Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a topic which so many people have seemed to pass through, got stuck in, perhaps have healed, many have cured. Some have said, I don't have a problem. Others have said, I wish I found this help before. It's all about alcohol, how it passes through your life, how it passes through the generations, how it has come onto our table. It's so simple and so easy to be able to just pick up a glass, to be social, to be something that you say is a habit. Still others say, I don't notice any difference. It is always the way it was. You know, I've always shared the story on this show, is that I live in the city of New Orleans. Booze here is in everything. It's in the donuts. It's in, a nighttime nightcap. It is in every social event, and it definitely is very easy to have. Yet, there are still people who say, I don't have a problem with it. But yet, we really want to look at that today. What is the problem? What is it about? And do we really need alcohol in our life? Because if you look back at history, many times people as a society have come up with things that they had to look at as a collective, as a community. Perhaps now in the year 2024, we're saying, do we really need substances? Do we need pills? Do we need an alcohol? Do we need those other things that used to carry us? Fill in the voids in our health, perhaps fill in the void of a broken heart, fill in the void of being left alone. Are we ready to start standing up and saying, I don't need things to make me who I am? I am, and that's just good enough. My guest today is Dustin Dunbar. His book is You're Doing Great and Other Lies Alcohol Told Me. Dustin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Dr. Jeanette. What a beautiful introduction. I got chills whenever you said, I am enough. It got me. I love it.
Yeah. Dustin, I think sometimes we look back and we say, how did we get to this place in our life today? Because, just as you've written in your book, so eloquently, as you've gone through your story, you've also put in parts about history, where we were at that time, what was going on. Because if we look back, you and I have both shared just before the show, is that our ancestors have all had problems with alcohol. But yet, if you look back at the early 1900s, that was what they used for medicine, Then they used it for war. Then they used it to celebrate when they came home. Then they used it to be able to feel good and be within community in the 50s and 60s. So really, are we casting out the stones and saying everything is bad? Or are we saying we are now learning better?
Yeah, the point with all of this is the science is coming out, and it's kind of like Galileo looking, through the telescope and saying, hey, this is what's going on, but people are refusing to see that ethanol is alcohol. Ethanol is the same exact substance as alcohol. And when we really look at it now, we're like, oh, my goodness, this is poison. And that's it. It's 100% poison. It's toxic. It is derived from rotten fruit and rotten vegetables. The substance that comes off of rotten fruit and rotten vegetables is ethanol. Ethanol is car fuel. The human body is not designed to consume ethanol on any kind of regular basis. So we did it because of pain. Our whole human consciousness history, the reason that we have done this is because of pain. We're trying to get out of either physical pain or psychological pain. And like you said, so many people are always bringing up, I was just in Europe, and so many people bring up, oh, but Europeans have been doing this for, centuries, and it goes back, and it's so eloquent and all this stuff. And I'm like, I was in Rome, I was just in Italy. The average ancient Roman lived for 25 years. This was a time of persecution, of death was everywhere. Game of Thrones is based on this time of medieval stuff. They were doing this, number one, the water was not good, so it was toxic, so they needed to add that to it, and it was sometimes safer to drink things with alcohol in it than water. But the big reason was everywhere you looked, babies didn't last. You'd had to have like 5 children to have one that would last through, 10 years, and through health and disease and famine. And this was not because they're being eloquent. They weren't being eloquent. They weren't being like these social, amazing, high-end, jet-setting people. It was to kill pain and to get through a very difficult time in human history. And so out of that, like you were saying, it's all, it's medicine, this and that. That's all we had for centuries. The only thing to kill pain readily available in human history until about 200 years ago when opium came around was ethanol. And that was it. And so the reason now we're drinking it, we're seeing all these people on social media and these, people flying around in jets, and they're saying they're having this luxurious life, drinking champagne and stuff. And you're promoting it, and it's like big alcohol has done such an amazing job at advertising and making this into this luxurious, like, life elixir. And so whenever I say alcohol, everybody's like, oh, nobody has a problem with me saying alcohol, the word alcohol. And then if I say ethanol, you're consuming ethanol. Everybody's like, oh, God, don't say that. I'm trying to enjoy my beer here. I'm like, you've been brainwashed so much that if I say alcohol, there's alcohol by volume, there's 5% alcohol in that. You don't have a problem with it because big alcohol has done an amazing job. If I say there's 5% ethanol in there, you almost verp and can't even drink your drink, and me even talking about it. What's the difference? And so it's almost comical to me now, having been 4 years out of it and just researched all the science. And what my point is now is I don't really talk about the negative things with ethanol and drinking it and consuming it. Yeah, there's tons. There's like 200 diseases that come out of it. 7 types of cancer has been proven. All this stuff, right? It's the joy that I focus on of being alcohol-free. That is the whole point of not drinking and not poisoning yourself and not numbing down your consciousness. The last couple of years since my body's been away from it, and really, out of it. And the last 2 years, I've had these just chills in my body where I'm like almost levitating joy. And that is these experiences that you hear, this mystical union with the universe and Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, this beautiful life that I'm now living that I would never have been able to. I never experienced these feelings, these emotions, this joy whenever I was drinking. That just had this poison and numbing myself down. And the whole time that I was doing that, I thought I was living this high life. I can afford this champagne. I can afford Camus wines. I'm living the life, right? And now I look back at that and I was like, oh, I was so brainwashed. I was so just in the alcohol matrix of like everybody else, 80% of people drinking this stuff and paying tons of money for it. And I'm getting fatter. I'm not present with my children. All I want to do is sit on the couch. I'm not kind to my wife. People don't really like me. I'm saying bad things at parties that I would never really say, and there was no filter. And now I've got wonderful friendships. I love hanging out with my children. They love me. I have an incredible relationship with my ex-wife. I have new girlfriends that are like really, there's this joyous life. And I'm like, the only thing that I really changed was I stopped drinking, and I'm 20 pounds lighter. I'm healthier. I'm glowing. My skin. All these things that add up to this joyous, beautiful, alcohol-free life. And the thing I really like to get onto really quick is that I'm not sober. The word sober, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means somber, subdued, and sedate. That is not what I am at all. So I always say I'm a joyous, alcohol-free man.
Yeah. I think also, too, Dustin, if we think about the words that we use, I've always said that there's the words that need to be kicked to the curb. And just as you shared, sober is one of them. But also, to the idea that alcohol is, it's definitely about being, with the pain aspect, but also it's about being with others. And that's that sense of being alone. When you have a drink, there's other people around. Alcohol becomes your co-pilot, so to speak, so that you're not alone. It helps you. It supports you. It brings you around to people. It makes you fun. People think it's a good thing. Like just as I shared here in New Orleans, it's all about celebration. If you can wake up in the morning, hey, it's time to have a drink. That's what it is. It's just the way it is. And it always has been. But it's up to you to decide what you want to do. Are you interested in likes, followers, hugs, joy, all of this stuff from others to fill what the hole is inside that you believe it is yourself? When in essence, if you could shed all of that outside, then you're growing from inside versus trying to find your repair work from outside. That's a big difference. And I think it's really started to come along with starting to look at alcohol has been since the internet. Because people started to say, oh, let's, hey, we could buy drinks. Look at all these fancy drinks. And they did that for about 5 or 6 years. And then now they're saying, oh, I'm not doing so well. And then they started asking the internet questions. Oh, what does alcohol mean? What is an alcoholic? What is it about? How can I, stop drinking? But then we still have, Instagram that still puts out these great recipes. But then they say, you really don't need it. So now we're kind of coming on a little bit, I'd say we're at the tilt point where, the majority of the people weren't seeking that outside stuff to fix them or fulfill their life or to get them those accolades to be able to bump up, that little obituary, and say, hey, I'm doing great and use it as a co-pilot, when in actuality they're saying, I'm good enough. I am definitely whole. Everything I need, I already have. I don't need to seek it from outside. So we're coming to the tipping point, I think, in society where people are realizing this. Possibly?
Yeah. No, consciousness is everything. And human consciousness is waking up, and it's beautiful.
Right.
Everybody talks about how the internet, a lot of people say, oh, it's horrible, it's all these things. What it's also doing, there's so much good to it. It's the entire universe is basically in the internet, and you're able to get people, like I'm seeing gurus and stuff that I would never get to connect with over in India that I'm like following, that are like saying this love and peace and joy and teaching me how to meditate. I got a, Zen Buddhist monk on Headspace, who is like from London, teaching me meditation skills. I'm like, that is just unbelievable. Have that at our fingertips.
Right.
And so just like we're having our awakening, just like we did with cigarettes. We went through, cigarettes were not in our consciousness for 10,000 years and more as when ethanol has been around for us as a painkiller. Cigarettes were a modern invention, in 1850s, and then they get really commercialized in the early 1930s. And then, obviously cancer came out and said, oh my gosh, this is a carcinogen, and everybody was like, oh, we got to get away from it. It's gross. It's terrible. But there for a while, it was the coolest thing. If you didn't have a cigarette in your hand, you weren't cool.
Right.
You weren't, like every party had tons of it around, right? And now we're seeing the exact same thing that is happening with ethanol. We're like, wow, this stuff, it's all coming out. The science is coming out. It's been a carcinogen since 1989. It's been deemed a carcinogen, but for reasons because of money and advertising and lobbyists, they've really suppressed that. But you can only suppress the truth for so long. So the truth is that it causes 7 types of cancer. And for men, like esophageal cancer is one of the biggest ones that it causes, obviously liver. But for women, just 2 glasses of wine per week causes a 15% increase in breast cancer. When I read, I was just like, what are you, not 2 days, not 2 glasses a day, 2 glasses a week. And so, and it goes up tremendously. If you have 3 a week, it goes up a lot after that, about 5% everyone. And so if you're doing the recommended 2 glasses of wine, I'm a light drinker, moderate, social, I only have 2 glasses a night, you're basically screaming at the universe, I want cancer. And it's just like being a cigarette smoker in the 50s and 60s. And we look around and go, why is all this breast cancer happening? Why is it? Because of ethanol. We have to stop consuming toxic poison that causes cancer and 200 other diseases.
I think also, too, Dustin, is that the idea is that it's all around us. I can watch a soap opera, and I can tell you every single one of them, they all have alcohol all the time in those, soap operas. And I'm going, why is this? Why are they always having a glass of something in their hand? And then also, too, some of these shopping channels, they always have them. Oh, it's something Friday or whatever that might be, And I think the idea is that mass market media, and we realize the power of the almighty dollar. Yes, cigarettes were big. They were big money for everybody and anything that it touched, for television shows, for movies, for people who did the job. I mean, everybody benefited from the money that cigarettes produced, right on up, from growing the plant to putting it on, our televisions. Everybody benefited. But then they also had a negative benefit. However, now there's really only, as we call it, an acceptable vice. And I think that's very important to look at, is alcohol is considered an acceptable vice. You can have a few on the show. It's no big deal. Everybody's doing it, and they kind of get away with it. And alcohol, the companies are so rich. It's incredible. Even since the pandemic, people were buying cases and cases and cases and having it delivered to their home, It was off the wall, how much it had exploded, it really had. And then we turn around and we say, now when people need to go back to work, they're saying, oh, I don't feel so good. I don't think I want to drink anymore. And they're struggling. And I think what your book is about to say is that what the struggle may look like for them and what your struggle looked like for you. Because there's many different ways to say, when I decide to stop today, okay, at the end, the question is, what next? How do I put my foot down when I get out of bed the next day? And that's really about it. How can you make the next day from morning till night without a drink, right?
Yes, and that's what my book definitely goes into. It's how to become alcohol-free and how to get through these. The first year, is where I'm really detailed and everything, and then I kind of set it up to where, okay, if I can get them through a year, the alcohol-free light will be absolutely shining so bright that they'll be like, I am cured, right? This isn't like, oh, I'm going to crave it for the rest of my life. I'm going to white knuckle this. I got to have willpower every day. Other programs like AA, they wake up and they're like, I have to focus today and every day. And this is completely different. This is where literally I can look at the most expensive, nicest, considering bottle of wine or any kind of alcohol beverage. And if I consider drinking it and visualize drinking it, I burp. Like I get sick, I get nauseous. Because I know that there's 13% ethanol in that gorgeous, Napa Valley wine. It's just disgusting to me. I'm like, why would I ever have done that? And I'm slapping my head and I'm like, I paid so much money. I was so brainwashed, like by what you said, this $1 trillion industry being able to show these ads since I've been tiny, the Budweiser Bullfrogs, the Coors Light Bikini Girls. The advertising that goes on, 5 ads per day since I was, 0. And then you're looking around and everybody's doing it, from the priest to your parents, to your uncles, and there's no social party without it. And at the social party, you're looking at advertisings on TV, watching the sports game, the football, and it's just like one after another showing, this elixir dripping from heaven with these people dancing in the Caribbean and having the best time. They don't show how all the deaths, all the accidents, and they don't show anything about, like, for example, when I say deaths, during COVID in 2020, at the peak of COVID, 1.8 million deaths, which is huge, worldwide. Like, oh my gosh, shut down the world, whole bit. That same year, 3 million alcohol-related deaths, almost double the amount that COVID shut down the entire world for. So, and it's getting, that alcohol number is getting bigger. And we went crazy for, COVID, trying to, oh my God, everybody's dying, which they were, right? The same thing is happening at almost double the rate. And what are we doing about it? Absolutely nothing. We have no restrictions on alcohol advertising. Other countries, even in Europe, I was just over there in France, has so many restrictions and bans, and you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say anything that promotes alcohol, TV, anything. And you would think, oh, France, one of their biggest industries is wine. And no, they know that it's 100% addictive to anyone who drinks it, and that causes cancer. They're awake to this, and like South Africa, we're like, okay, South Africa is developing kind of country. Apartheid just comes out of this, and they don't allow any alcohol advertising at all. And there's other countries same way, right. And the United States, I always follow the money, and I'm like, it's the lobbyists. The alcohol industry is absolutely paying, to have these votes and to have this not happen. So if you want to be part of this revolution, it's alcoholfreerevolution.org. And the first page, the landing page, I have ban alcohol advertising. You can click on that. You can support it. And that will, once we get 200,000 people to be part of that, then we get to sign it, and we get a major petition to get this stuff banned and protect our children. I can't believe how brainwashed I was by these Budweiser Bullfrog, Spuds McKenzie, the whole, it's just amazing. Those ads were not designed for adults. Those ads were specifically designed for children. And they're doing the same exact thing with music and dancing and all this stuff. And Apple, like the liquor that they're selling now is like whiskey, like 40% alcohol, but they've designed it where that you can barely taste it, and it's like apple, Canadian apple whiskey, and you're just like, these kids watching this, and it's this apple dripping juice out of the apple. Well, we all know that kids love apple juice, right? So I'm watching my children. At the time, they were like 6 and 8. They're 9 and 11 now, and I'm watching them, and I can just see their faces watching these ads going, oh, wow, I wonder what that apple juice tastes like, and those people are dancing and all this stuff, and it's Crown Royal apple, and we're talking about 40% ethanol. So, yeah, we've got a lot to do, but we're starting. Like, I'm so positive about this. I'm so joyful to be having this conversation with you and getting it out there in the world, and the book is being is received so well. And what we're finding with the book, though, is that people are actually just being cured by the book, and then by my website. There's a lot of information on there, and reading my book and Annie Grace's This Naked Mind, those two in combination, I set up this whole website with all these coaches from around the world that are the top in their field, from nutritionists to hypnotherapists to myself. I have a doctorate in psychology. I've gone through all this stuff and ready to counsel people. I'm like, people are reading my book, and they're not really needing what's going on. And I start talking to them, and they're like, no, Dustin, I've read your book. I've read Annie Grace's book. I've listened to them. I'm good. And I'm like, what do you mean you're good? And they're like, no, I don't want to drink anymore. It's ethanol. Why would I want to drink ethanol? And I'm like, but I set all this up. I have all these things. And they're like, no, I read the light. It came on fast, and I'm like, that's so interesting. So I have it there. The alcoholfreerevolution.org is there for all people. We have meetings if you need it and all this stuff. But what's so awesome that I'm realizing is that this isn't some it's not going to take long to unbrainwash an entire population. We're going to do it. We're going to do it pretty quick, kind of like cigarettes. We're going to get this out. And the awesome part too is I was over in Europe, and there's so much beer over there that is without alcohol. literally everything you can think of, from IPAs to stouts to browns to lagers to rattlers. I mean, everything. They're like, yeah, we got, what do you want? And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, some of them had grapefruit, beer, like without alcohol. And so that's out there. The beer is out there. However, the wine was not. And the wine is not good yet, but it's coming. And I was in New Zealand, and they have really good alcohol-free red wine coming out from New Zealand. So believe me, and everywhere I went in Europe, I was like, do you have wine senza alcohol, wine without alcohol? And they were all talking about it and how they got to get it, and, these nicer places and stuff. And so the goal is to just keep asking that. And then whenever I go back over there, in 3 or 4 years, I guarantee you these places are going to have it. And it's just this consciousness raising thing that I live. My whole point is, with all of this in my counseling, is we're going to continue to live exactly the way we have, where we can drink whatever we want. Beer, wine, tequila, vodka, the whole gin, all of it, yet we're going to remove the ethanol. We now have the science. It can taste the same. We can get the spicy tequila, all this stuff that we really enjoy, right? Because we've just grown up with it. Now you just remove the ethanol out of it and live your life. And I'm in Ibiza, and I'm sitting there having these beautiful beers, and I'm feeling joyous. I get up in the morning, I work out, and I go meditate, and everybody else that I'm around is just, they feel disgusting because they had ethanol. It's the only difference. I stayed up late with them, did everything with them. The only difference between me and them feeling great the next day was that I did not drink.
Right. I also think, though, Dustin, is the word beer, wine, perhaps maybe by just taking out the word ethanol, are we truly making some absolutely drastic changes in our life? Because, yes, we can say I can have a beer or I can have an alcohol-free beer. Perhaps maybe you could say, I really don't. In other words, the alcohol-free beer should maybe not be called beer. Do you know what I'm saying? Because in essence, it's just trading the word and saying, I can have this or I can have that. You know what I mean? In other words, it's a real psychological concept here, is the idea. What am I trading?
Yeah. I think we're getting into serious semantics there.
Right. And that's true. Yeah. Because a lot of times people will turn around and say, well, they'll sit down and they'll have maybe whatever they're drinking or whatever it is. And then they'll say, okay, but tomorrow I'll have an alcohol-free one or whatever, because people are going to judge me. Do you see? So it comes up in the judgment kind of thing. So have people really looked at the inner core of themselves? Have they really sought out what got them into that place, what was really holding them down, or maybe taking control of their life? And can they see just switching it out, maybe for an alcohol-free one, so that other people don't judge them? Is that always the answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all what you're comfortable with. I personally, I say everybody, there's a thing in Zen, and it says there are as many ways to the one as there are beings on this planet, right? So there's so many ways to get to the universe and mystical union and all this stuff, right? I say that same thing about becoming alcohol-free. This isn't a competition, like I mentioned AA earlier.
Right.
There's no competition. If that resonates for you, and you need to call yourself an alcoholic, and you're incurable, and that's just comfortable for you, absolutely do it. Whatever it takes to become alcohol-free is awesome, and you're going to find your own way. You've got, people have their society that they grew up with. Like me, I grew up in Oklahoma, where it was just part of the entire thing. I mean, like hunting, fishing, becoming a man, got to take a whiskey shot, and then, it's just part of the entire culture, the country music, all this stuff. So that's very different from somebody who maybe grew up in the Middle East, where, it's illegal pretty much, and you don't do it, but then you moved away and you moved to New York City. It's just a completely different thing. And whatever's comfortable for you, that is what you need to do. And I just preach all the time, like the only point is stay away from the ethanol. So if you are comfortable and you really enjoy drinking beer, like on a hot summer day, I mow the lawn, and I'm like, man, a cold beer just sounds amazing. All I do, I go to my refrigerator. Well, I don't have any regular beer in there. I have very good different types of cold, alcohol-free beer, and I can drink as many of those as I want without any issues whatsoever. And that's the whole point. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. But, yeah, we got to look. The point of taking away the Band-Aid is where I think you're getting and really looking at ourselves inside. And that's what I set up the Alcohol-Free Revolution for, is because whenever I did this 4 years ago, I didn't have anybody to kind of lean on and talk to about it. And so that is what I have all these coaches from around. I have a nutritionist that I just got with, and it's Ella DeVar. She is one of the top nutritionists in the world. She's out of Miami, and she's volunteering her time. So she's one of the coaches. That's just a perfect example. And she's got 2 books out. She's on all kinds of shows. And her whole point with alcohol is she's a longevity nutritionist. And so she says before anything about food, she says, look, if you're consuming ethanol, alcohol on any kind of consistent basis, whatever we do with, eating kale, almonds, salmon, all this healthy stuff, having you exercise and everything, you're negating everything if you are consuming ethanol on any kind of consistent basis. So first of all, we really got to get that way down or even obsolete. That's number one. And then now we can work on really being healthy with adding different things with food and drinks and stuff like that. But it's just interesting that up front, she's just like, the biggest problem she sees with almost all the people in the beginning is they're drinking too much ethanol, and it's causing them to crave really bad food like pizza, well, I love pizza, so now the pizza can't get after being in Italy, but the fried food, and not wanting to exercise, it's just a downward spiral whenever you've got ethanol running through your veins on any kind of consistent basis. And so, but yeah, that looking in the mirror is what you will have to do, and it's painful. It's really painful because you suppress your consciousness, has been so numbed down, and you've been covering up. Mostly 70% of heavy drinkers have childhood trauma. And that childhood trauma has been so suppressed for all those years, since you've been probably 15, 16 years old, been drinking and covering up that pain. What happens whenever you remove the Band-Aid in the beginning is that pain surfaces. And it did for me, I can't even begin to tell you. I went into 3 days of just absolute full-on abandonment fear from my father abandoning me when I was 5, 6 years old. He left the family. He was drinking and abusive to my mom. I had gotten my doctorate in psychology, and I thought I'd studied all this. I thought I researched it. I thought I helped all these other people, and I thought I was through with it. Well, the whole time I was drinking, and then I completely stopped drinking, and then that all resurfaced. And I really realized I kept going deeper is that I had fear of abandonment from the universe and being disconnected and like a piece of meat floating out in the ocean, just ready to be swallowed up by a shark at any time, and just felt alone, felt isolated. And I kept going in deeper and deeper. And I realized fully that I am joy. I am peace. I am light, and I can never be abandoned. And the universe I am connected to everything and everyone. And this joy now that is just flooding through me is so fun. And just I laugh about everything. I giggle. I have this twinkle in my eye. And that is the point of becoming alcohol free, is we are here on this earth not to gain material things, to enjoy them, to enjoy sex, to enjoy all these things, but to raise our consciousness and to keep evolving as humans, and just that is the point. And you cannot do that whenever you have ethanol in you in any consistent kind of way. All you're doing in this so-called high life that you're living by being able to afford nice wines, nice champagnes, and all these different kinds of craft beers all the time, you're in an unconscious way that is so much lower level of life than a mystical union with the universe. And the only way you're ever going to get to that mystical union, that high consciousness life, is by taking ethanol out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, too, people will say, but it's so hard, and they lose. There's a lot of loss when you let go of your co-pilot, so to speak. It's almost as if you're both driving this, single-engine plane, and your co-pilot craps out, and you're like, you don't know how to drive the plane, and you lose everything, and you're in free fall. I think sometimes when you're in free fall, I always liken it to the soul's spiritual journey. You're in the abyss, so to speak. You're in that place where things start to fall away. Those things that you may have been tethered to. It may have been the people that you hang out with, the job that you have with your family members. It might be your dependence on a certain salary. It might be your social status, or perhaps how you reflect in the world. And when you start to let those things just fall away, there is a period sometimes that you have to regroup, and you say, that perhaps was not the me that I chose for me inside. That was just what I was reflecting out in the world. And then it's time that you start creating who you want to be for the rest of this time that we're here on the earth. And that's really a very spiritual journey that you're on, so to speak. And a lot of people are coming to that point. And when you start to see that, you don't... pretty much, I think people look back and they say, oh, my gosh, I did all those things wrong. I wasted so much time. I took the wrong road. When really, in essence, those were tools and events and experiences that got you where you are today. So they are not negative. They are not wrong. They just were things that happened to be able to escalate you within the story of where you are now. And that's very important to recognize, I think. Don't you think?
It's absolutely. You're getting into one of my favorite poets out there is Hafez, and he is a Sufi poet, and everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. And so you sit there and you go, okay, in your life, like, well, this part was sacred where, I had my children, I got married, and all these like nice things. But when he says everything, you start looking at, okay, what does that mean? Like, oh, wait a minute. Those bad times, those times when, for me, personally, I was like in the back of a strip club, drunk, blacked out, and I got 2 beautiful children at home and a beautiful wife. And I started looking at the times, and I'm like, man, I was completely out of control, completely unconscious. How can that be sacred? That is what made me who I am today, and made me go, okay, how can I help other people not suffer and not go through what I did? And the motivation to work on a book, for 4 years, to set up a nonprofit organization, a worldwide nonprofit organization to help people for free, to give all my these book sales away. It's because of those times that they were so painful that that's the sacredness of them, and I call them your sacred wound moment. And what that also does is alleviate from all the guilt, all the shame. Yes, we're all idiots on ethanol. Don't try to fool yourself. If somebody says, "Oh, I can handle my drink," it's always that person in the corner. "Oh, I handle it," and they're drinking every day and everything. Oh yeah, do you handle it? Ask their spouse, ask their children if they can handle it, and the answer is a huge no. Absolutely not. That person, is not present. They're not healthy. They're not real joy, and we all know that. And then it's just funny whenever people, "Oh, I can handle it." Yeah, no, nobody can. I've played rugby. I played rugby in Liverpool, England, and I was with those guys. They're huge, and they're tattooed, and they're bald, and they're tough, and they're the toughest people I've ever met in my life. And I've drank with them. They cannot handle their ethanol. Nobody can.
Right.
And those guys, I've connected with them still. They got addicted. They've been through rehab, all these things, and you think, oh, they're these fun, rugby athletes. No, they were when they were, 18, and they just started drinking, and then that whole culture just absolutely swallowed them up. So if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, you're younger, oh, I'm going to be able to handle mine. I'm not like my dad. I'm not like this. I'm not like this person. Absolutely. This is a 100% addictive substance that we're talking about. Nobody, do not ever think that you can get through this and be like somebody else that is like having a glass a day, this and that. Because if you have that in your head, you the first, you take a drink, then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes you. That is how this works. That's how every addictive substance works. And some people are like, oh, well, cigarette smokers. My brother, he's a twin, and he got addicted to cigarettes, but I smoked and I didn't. And I'm like, well, how many did you have? And he's like, well, this and that. And the brother had tons of cigarettes, and that's why they got addicted, because it's an addictive substance. It's all based on how much you consume of an addictive substance. So you got to see it as not some kind of allergy that only certain people have, like AA says, not some kind of gene, not like because, oh, I'm Irish, Mexican, any kind of cultural stuff. The ethanol is an addictive substance, and that is period. You've got to take it and be so careful. If you are going to drink it, every now and then, like I'll have a cigar once a month. I'll have a really nice cigar. I know for a fact that cigar causes cancer. I know that cigar is going to hurt me for the next 2 days of choking on it because it's bad for me. There's so many things that I know. I'm so conscious of that, what I'm doing when I'm smoking that cigar, and that's why I have one a month, okay? If you're having more than 2 glasses of wine per week, you're increasing your cancer rate tremendously. And then the addiction stuff sets in, you have more. And it's so rare for somebody to have only 1 glass a week. It's just like I know very few people that can do that. So just be so careful out there with this substance.
Yeah. Well, I think in closing, Dustin, I think the question you can ask yourself is, if you sit down with a piece of paper and you say, I love alcohol because, I like alcohol because, I choose alcohol because, and I'm going to continue on alcohol because, and just line up those answers and see what they reflect back to you, And then you could say, alcohol does for me blank, and alcohol helps me blank. Ask yourself some of these questions. Where alcohol helps me feel, alcohol brings me this. If you start asking yourself those questions, you will start saying, but what is alcohol? Alcohol is a noun. Have you now given it that position that it isn't you anymore? It's the noun. Alcohol is doing that. And wow, you sit back and you say, but I was really saying, that alcohol was making me feel good. No, you're saying that alcohol in a sentence. I liken it back to in the 50s when I used to diagram sentences, in grade school, You have a noun and you have a verb. What does it do? Alcohol does. So if this is alcohol doing it, there's no longer you. You're not present. So are you going to wake up and give your power to the alcohol to do your life, or are you going to have the power? That's a very profound question, I think, that we might all ask ourselves. What is it that we're giving the power to, perhaps?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because now people ask me why I don't drink. And used to, I'd be like kind of squeamish about it, like not confident, because everybody, 80% of people are drinking, and it's like the cool thing and all this stuff. The question is not, why do I not drink? The question is, why do you drink? And then you get to exactly what you're talking about. Why am I drinking ethanol? You've heard this show now. You know that ethanol is a rotten fruit liquid substance that's addictive and that causes cancer. Why do you continue to drink this? What is it in you that needs this substance, that thinks you need this substance? And you get into that, and absolutely you're like, wow, I'm actually addicted to this. Because if this was some sort of, let's say it's milk, right? And they come out and they say, oh my gosh, milk causes cancer, 7 types of cancer, 200 diseases, and all kinds of other psychological issues, and you're going to crave it, you're going to get addicted to it, and you're not going to be able to quit it, and you're probably going to die an early death. everybody would go, oh my gosh, we can't drink milk anymore. Milk is done, right? But with an addictive substance that we've been brainwashed to think that we must have to have this fashionable, high-end life with all this social, sexier stuff, we can't do it. We can't, and we're like that, and you're hitting it exactly on the head. It's like, it's not you anymore. You're not there. And
right.
So you got to wake up to that and go inside for a while, ask those hard questions, and then come out and go, do I want to live a real full life that is absolutely the best I can be? The only way you can do that is first to remove any kind of ethanol drinking on any kind of consistent basis. Until you do that, you're just numbing your consciousness down, numbing your physical body down, and nothing's going to evolve. And you're going to go through this life, and that's going to be it. And you're going to die shorter term. Everybody who drinks any kind of ethanol on a consistent basis dies early compared to what they would, and that'll be it. And it's like, really? That's what I did? Or you can choose to remove it from your life completely and get into these joyous ecstasy experiences and live your fullest life and be the best that you can be. And it's so fun to watch people do this. I'm so happy to be on the show and doing it. People can go to Dustin-Dunbar.com for the book, and it's like Audible, Kindle, and hardback. And then alcoholfreerevolution.org is where everything is at with all the materials and all of our coaching, like elladevar.com with the nutritionist. She's doing all of that stuff, and tons of information out there from her and what alcohol does, and then free everything else on longevity.
Very good. You know what, Dustin, I think that sometimes people will say, I just kind of pick up the book and it's sort of like they peruse it. And I think definitely your book leads to that. You can just glance at it and pick out what you need. Sometimes people don't need to read the whole book before it triggers something in them. And perhaps somebody will pick it up, look at it, sit it down, but maybe they'll remember something. It's not about hitting you over the head to be able to say, here's the way you have to do it. Here's the way it's going to play out for you. And here are all the answers to your cure. What we're really talking about today, and in conclusion, is about being able to say, can you be triggered to look at your life in reflection and say, what would I like to change? How would I like to live my life with greater joy or ease? And how can I really make the choices each day that are best for me? That's what we're really saying, don't you think?
Yes, and it's like we said, it's all about consciousness, and consciousness is everything. You want your consciousness to live on kind of a dull and kind of existence where you're not really just having fun and joy, and you're getting experiences here and there, or do you want your consciousness to be at the highest level it can be and just get into this like ecstasy stuff that I'm talking about? And that's the joy that's within. And like you said, at our most true essence, we are joy, ease, and lightness. If you're numbing it down with any kind of substance, and it can be alcohol, it can be cigarettes, it can be cocaine, anything like that, and you're doing it on any kind of consistent basis, you're not going to live in that high consciousness, joy, ease, and lightness of what you truly are.
Very good. Well, Dustin, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And we've shared many tips and perhaps maybe things that people will say it's something to consider, and that's really our goal. So I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette, for having me on. This has been a pleasure.
If you'd like to find out more information about Dustin Dunbar, again, his book is You're Doing Great and Other Lies Alcohol Told Me. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information. And definitely do take up the challenge and say, I'm going to look at my life, I'm going to make a change, and then I'm going to share my story with others. I'm going to get behind the movement to be able to say, do we really need to have alcohol being this really thing that hits us in the face with our television, with our media, with other people, our social events in the world around us? Do we always have to have those little things that blink up and pop up on our internet that are alcohol-based? Not really. We don't really need them. And how can we make the change in a society? It's about being able to create a life going forward for our children. Are you really able to be able to stand up and say, I think I'm really ready? That's what we're saying today. It's time. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.